something I hope that we can all take into account. And, it says in Hebrews that, we fix our eyes, on the finish line, on the prize. And that's really what it takes. It takes this complete commitment to go through the difficult parts of life. And I was thinking of it this way, perseverance and patience are like cousins. And patience is the attitude, and perseverance is the action. Patience is the attitude that says, I'm going to hang in there. I'm just going to wait. I know that things aren't the way I want them right now, but my time's going to come, or my situation's going to change. But perseverance is the action. So patience is the waiting. Perseverance is the working. And you have to be able to get up every day, to go through the challenging and the difficult circumstances that life gives you. And it builds character in you. It builds something that makes you a stronger person. And like in that video, I love this, how the father comes out of the stands and lifts his son up. And I can only think that, when life gets so hard that you can't go on, God, of course, comes in and he gives us strength, and he undergirds us. He puts his arm around us, and he carries us towards the finish line. I even loved in that video how he lets his son cross the line by himself. And I think God does that. He just comes to get us where we need to so that we can get back on our feet and become the person that he wants us to become. See, perseverance, this is what's key. Perseverance isn't just about accomplishing great things, although it is absolutely essential to accomplishing great things. Perseverance is about becoming a great person. So perseverance helps us accomplish great things, but perseverance helps us become great people. Great in the right sense of the word, great. A true person, as James says, a mature person. That's what we're after. My mother-in-law told me the other day, we were sitting down, she goes, I'm so sick of hearing everyone talk about the new normal. I'm so sick of it. I don't want to hear new normal again. I didn't have the heart to tell her that that's what I named the series that you're listening to right now. That's another point. But here's the thing to think about. When I talk about a new normal, I'm not just talking about how things are. That we're working from home or we're ordering groceries online. Those are all new normals. It's actually a much deeper meaning to me. What I'm hoping for all of us during this time is that we become a new normal. That new normal is not our circumstances, our jobs, but we are new. And it's normal for us to be more patient, to be more persevering. Paul said there's the old man and then there's the new man. In other words, Paul acted and lived and responded in a certain way because he was that kind of person. And after his life was changed, after he transformed, he was a new person. And he talked about that. He talked about the old man and the new man. And that's what we're going to talk about today as we talk about perseverance. When we learn to persevere, it can change us to, as James says, become mature, the new person. And the new person has very, very different qualities than the old person. So my prayer is that we become a new normal. And what I mean by normal is it's just normal for you to be patient. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be if it was normal for you to be mature or to not overreact or to not be filled with anger or hatred? If it was just normal, if it just flowed out of you. I think that's what spiritual growth is all about, by the way. I don't think spiritual growth is about gritting your teeth and just trying hard, but you're so angry. I think when we really develop, it's just there. It just flows. Now, some of you would say, gosh, that seems impossible. But I don't think so. I think as we go through things in life, if we allow ourselves, and there's the key, if we allow ourselves to let things go, if we allow ourselves to open up, we become mature. And then we can become these kind of people where it's normal. It's just normal. Now, to do that, you've got to be willing to expand. Think of your mind and your heart, maybe your heart even more so, is this elastic thing that can expand. Jesus gave a great analogy. He said, you can't put new wine into old wineskins. Old wineskins, old mentality is crusty. Now think, it can't expand anymore, right? And a new wineskin has elasticity to it. It can expand. And so to receive what's new, the new normal, whether it's a new difficulty at work, whether it's the new way people do life, anything that's new, and we are afraid of change. But if you are an elastic person, you can expand your heart, then you can handle the things that are new. So last week I ended the message talking about a story, a scenario of someone that was born in 1900. And I gave the example of great-grandma Selders. So I want to relaunch today telling you the story of a man who was born in 1901. You know his name. His name's world famous. In some ways, he could have the most famous name on the planet, Walt Disney. And the thing that many people don't know about Walt Disney is Walt Disney had incredible perseverance. Walt Disney was born, I think he was number 4 of 5 children. His older brothers all got out of the house as soon as they could because the reports were that the father was abusive. And so young Walt Disney spent time alone drawing, just trying to soothe his mind from an incredibly tense, difficult home life. And he wanted so bad to get out of the house, get this, that he lied about his age to go into World War I as an ambulance driver. Think about that. I so badly want to get out that I'm going to lie to go to war. Must said something about the difficulty that he endured as a child. After the war, he went to Kansas City and he worked in a newspaper. And there's a couple of famous quotes. One of them is talking about Walt Disney's lack of creativity. And later on, he and his brother Roy started their first kind of animated business, which in about a year and a half, maybe it was 2 years, went bankrupt. So he's got failure after failure, and he decides to go out to Los Angeles and try to make it in acting. He doesn't make it in acting, so again, a failure, but he decides that there are no animation studios in the area, and so he sets up his own, and he comes up with Oswald the Rabbit, the Lucky Rabbit, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And it actually turns out to be successful. You should look up some of the pictures because he looks a lot like a certain mouse that's introduced later. But Oswald the Lucky Rabbit started to take off. And Walt Disney had to go back to New York to renegotiate his contract. And what he found out when he got to New York was that the company that he worked with took all of his animators and had the legal rights to Oswald the Rabbit. And Disney was rejected and found himself having nothing again. But on that train ride from New York back to Los Angeles, he created a character known as Mickey Mouse. You see, it's perseverance. It's this ability to just keep going and keep going and keep going. Now, it's different than bitterness. Some people think you just grit your teeth and get angry at the world. And bitterness just kills you, just destroys your creativity. But perseverance is this mixture of patience where you just have this attitude like, I'm just gonna hang in there. I'm gonna keep on going. I wanted to quote what Disney said because I thought it was so worth repeating. And he said this about the perseverance that built up in his life. He says, all the adversity I've ever had in my life, all the troubles and all the obstacles have strengthened me. You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. Go figure. Walt Disney's saying that maybe a kick in the teeth was the best thing in the world. And I think sometimes what happens is, as he said there very well, at the time, it doesn't feel good. At the time, it doesn't seem right. And of course that's true. But you know what? I started to look, and not only Disney, but Albert Einstein and person after person. Did you know Einstein couldn't speak until he was 4 years old? 4 years old. And I think about that, and I think, we're always measuring, I'm sure you did as well, or do with your young children, and how, you have websites, and how many words should Charlie know, and what, you're always wanting to make sure they're developing, carefully. And think about the panic. This kid's going to be a nobody, Albert Einstein. And you could just go through person after person in the Bible. Think about it. Think about King David. He was overlooked as a young teen when the prophet came to Jesse's house and said, bring all the boys in. We're going to anoint the next king is going to be from this house. And Jesse scrambles, gets all the kids together. And of course, they don't even bring David inside. He's left out to the pasture, right? And think about it. When they do finally bring him in, and the prophet does anoint David, he's not king right away. In fact, he has to go through probably 15 years, where he is pushed down. He is now, then the king later becomes jealous of him. And David has to keep serving and waiting his time for 15 years before he finally becomes the king. Perseverance. Think of Joseph. You know the story of Joseph? He has this dream that he's going to be second in command to Pharaoh himself. But it doesn't happen right away. In fact, his brothers are jealous of him. They sell him to be a slave. Then he's a servant in this household, and he works his way up, and he takes care of everything. He does the right thing for his master. He makes Potiphar very profitable. He is a high impact, low maintenance employee, right? And Potiphar can keep turning more and more things over to David because he's so good at what he does and he's so trustworthy. And then all of a sudden, Potiphar's wife lies about David, and David's shoved right back to the bottom again. And now he's in a prison system. And David, again, he says, he stays with it. He keeps being faithful. He keeps working and persevering. And every time he seems like he's going to get lifted up, he gets knocked back down again. He did that for probably 14 years before he finally reaches the place where his dream, where he set out in his dream. Whether it's the woman who was bleeding for 12 years in the Gospel of Luke, right? And she presses through this crowd. She's gone to doctors. Nothing's worked for her. In other words, the whole story in the scripture is a story of perseverance. Jesus being the ultimate example. It says, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, and all that came with it and all that came before it. It's endurance. So persevering is this quality. And what this quality does is it develops other good qualities, right? And it's sort of like a cycle. One thing leads to another, and it starts to build on itself. Now, having this quality of perseverance is so absolutely critical to us that I wanted to share a couple of thoughts about maturity, because how do we know when we're becoming mature? How do we know when perseverance is finishing its work in us? I think we need some measurements, some things to go by. And so I found some that I want to share with you, and they came. I took different slices, but it's from a book called Falling Upward, and the idea is, when Jesus said, the last will be first and the first will be last, or to save your life, you have to lose your life. It's kind of this counterintuitive way of thinking about life that, or as Walt Disney said, you need to get kicked in the teeth, right? Somehow when we persevere, we can find maturity. But I wanted to give some marks. Like, how do we know when I've moved into a more mature version of ourselves? Now, we can deceive ourselves and think, oh, I've arrived. And I just wanted to say, I feel like I have a long way to go. That's why I try to read, or I try to be around people that I think are seasoned, wiser people, you might say. And so here are what I found as some marks of maturity, and just see if they start to resonate with you, or if you realize, man, there's some areas where I need to move to the next level in my life. So mature people, they're less and less interested in eliminating the negative or the fearful. Just think about that. Usually if something's negative or fearful, we just want it out. They just can handle that things aren't always perfect. They can just receive it and just kind of let it be. And this is so important. They don't feel the need to hold on to old hurts, and they don't feel the need to punish people. Now, when you're young, this is important, you define yourself by differentiating. I'm better than that person. I remember as a young kid, I couldn't wait for field day, right? And how far you could throw the softball. You guys remember field day? Do they have that anymore? And you always wanted to differentiate yourself. I'm better than this kid. I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm smarter. That's normal. That's a part about growing up. But this is what's important. As you get older, you don't look to differentiate yourself. You look for things that you have in common. You look to unite with other people. This is huge. You find happiness in being alike with other people. You don't need to dwell on the differences that you have between yourself and other people. And listen to this. You don't exaggerate problems. And I want to give you a direct quote. Creating drama has become boring. A mark of maturity. I don't need to create any drama. I'd much rather find things that can bring me together. Here's another mark. You go from being stiff and rigid, and stiffness and rigidness and rules and all of that is a part of growing up, right? Separation. This is right, this is wrong. But as you mature, you become different. You become seasoned. And as it was said here, the 8 Beatitudes replace the 10 Commandments. That is to say, not replace, they have nothing to do with them, but even follow what Jesus taught. You know, he said, you heard it said this, but I say to you. In other words, life has a different nuance to it. And you don't become rigid, but you become pliable like that new wineskin. And things take on different meaning to you. I like this one. It was very simple and straightforward. If you talk too much or too loud, you're not an elder, or you're not mature. Think about it. The loud talking, the need to be right, the proving all the time. These are marks that we just haven't gotten there yet. Maybe we're growing, maybe we're learning and we're making progress. Now, you don't need to prove anything, right? You don't need to prove that your team is right, that your God is right, that your religion is right, that your denomination is right. When people are always trying to prove, usually it's a sign that they haven't moved to maturity. Think about this. The God of the mature person is no longer this small tribal God, but this wider God, the God of Jesus, as we say. Now think about, if you are moving towards maturity, your concern is not so much to have what you love, but to love what you already have. What a great statement. It's not to always want something more, but to see what you have and to learn how to love and enjoy your circumstances and your life and your situation. One more I want to give you. Marks of maturity. You are no longer surprised or angered at when most people, right, are focused on doing immature things. You say, well, isn't that the mark that you're mature, is when you look back at people that are immature and you get annoyed or irritated? No, it might mean you're trying to turn the corner. But I think what he's saying here is when you become mature, you realize that kids are kids. Think about it. So maybe this example would help. A 10-year-old could be incredibly annoyed by a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, saying they're so immature, they're so this, because they think they're so far ahead. Are you getting this? You have more than one child in the house? This person's so ignorant. But when you get 35, when you get 45, when you get 65, you look back at a 6-year-old and you think that they're cute, or they're sweet, or they're just a child. You see the difference? The problem is, I think some of us have moved just a couple years and we're looking back and we're so annoyed at certain people. They're so immature in the way they're handling this. Don't you think we need this message right now in our society? People are just barking at each other. And we need to realize, not look down on people so much, but we need real, true saints. We need real elders in our society that can move through all of this and just realize that people are where they are in life. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we don't help them. If you have a young child in your house, it doesn't mean you don't help them mature, but you also very clearly you realize that they are a child. You see, true maturity pushes you through this and past this to another level. You remember when Jesus talked about the keys of the kingdom and he says you will bind things and you will loose things? You know, I never really fully knew what that meant or thought about it. But binding might be what like first level religion is. It's like elementary school. You have tons of rules and you can't do this and you can't do this. And you bind things, you're forbidden things. But as you mature, you loose things. You give people freedom. You set them free. You focus on the inside. When you're raising a child, you tell them all these things they can and they cannot do. But as they become mature, you open them. You see what the difference is? You loose them. You move more from the inside, more from the heart. When I was, I think I was 18 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. I remember, I think I was heading off to college. And I remember going through all of my stuff, like what am I going to take to college? And I had all these boxes of things and I had all these trophies in a box. And I remember when I was a young kid, junior high school, all I wanted was to win trophies. That's all. I mean, I just woke up every day. Again, I was trying to differentiate myself. I wanted to beat people. I wanted to be faster. And I remember my boxing coach back in Flint, I got to go to his house one time. And he had a boxing family. His boys all were into fighting, and many of them turned pro. And I walked in their living room, and I still remember mentally this picture. I walked in the front door, and there were trophies on the floor, lined up, and one after another, all stacking all across. They had trophies everywhere in that house. And that became my obsession. I want to win these trophies. And I got into boxing, and so you get these trophies. And I remember when there was, they're cheap plastic. They're just horrible trophies, right? And, they have a boxer like this, and the arm's falling off, and the plaques were falling off because they're so cheap. And I started thinking, do I want to carry these things around the rest of my life? And I still remember getting my dad's John Deere tractor, and it had a bucket on the front, and digging a hole out by his workshop and burying all those trophies. And I didn't know this at the time. I was reading about this later, that it's a common thing in a boys' initiation culture to bury their toys from their childhood. That you're becoming a man when you bury them. I didn't know it at the time. Now I look back and I go, wow. it's amazing when you spend your whole life and all your energy trying to be something, and then you get to the point where you don't care anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. You see, there have to be little hallmarks of maturity in your life where you just bury the things that used to matter so much. Right up above me, I've got a couple of oars. And, there's an interesting story about Odysseus. And Odysseus was this character in Homer's stories who rode, and he got through all of these journeys with his oar, right? And then he had to go on what they call a further journey. And they told him to take his oar, row away from the island of Ithaca, and when he got to the mainland, he was to walk until he met a person, basically, I'm summarizing, who thought his oar was a winnowing fork. In other words, you get to a place so deep in the farmland where they don't know anything about the sea. He made who he was at sea. This is what I'm trying to say. He became somebody at sea. He persevered, but now he needed to go to another journey. And famously, he buries his oar. That is to say, this oar brought me this far in life, but now I'm going to bury it because I need to go on another journey. I need to take my life to another level. A lot of people never bury their oar. What got them there, their wits or their money or their whatever it is, that they still, to the end of their life, they just keep using the same thing. And I think the key is what God's trying to do is to move us to another level in life. But to do that, you have to let go of some of the things that got you there. And so that's what Jesus, I think, meant when he said, you have to find your life, you have to lose it. And the last will be first. Maybe it's time, in our life to just bury some stuff. Maybe it's time to let go. I guess maybe it was last week. I'm not sure which week we did it, but the Katinas did a song for us. And it had to do with falling upward. And as I listened to the words and watched them sing, I thought, that's it. If we could get this message and internalize this message, falling is a part of life. And perseverance is getting through it. And so you can go to the next level. And so I thought it'd be a great way to wrap this message up by joining them as we sing and participate in this song together. Please enjoy.
What fortune lies beyond the stars, those dazzling heights too fast to climb. I got so high to fall so far, but I found heaven as love swept low. My heart beating, my soul breathing, I found my life when I laid it down. Upward falling, spirit soaring, I touched the sky when my knees hit the treasure waits within your skies. This gift of freedom gold can't buy. I bought the world and sold my heart. You traded heaven to have me again. My heart beating, my soul breathing. I found my life when I laid it. Falling, spirit soaring, I touch when my knees hit the my heart beating, my soul breathing. I found the light when I laid it down. A word falling, spirit soaring. I touched the sky when my knees hit the when my knees hit the.
I hope you're just letting it all sink in. I know that God is doing a good work in us. In Philippians it says, he who began a good work, he will complete it. He's like the Father that comes alongside of us and helps us carry on and carry forward. I wanted to close by just reading something from Falling Upward. And it talks about the kind of people that we are, that God's making us into. And it says, for the people who've moved to maturity, it says they have a double kind of belonging is characteristic of people at this stage. They belong in more than one place. No one group meets all their needs, desires, and visions. We talked about that a couple weeks ago when we talked about how Jesus wouldn't fit in a camp. He wouldn't be just a Pharisee or just a Sadducee or just a zealot. He didn't fit because he had moved. Jesus was showing us what the next level of living was like. What this illustrates, of course, is a newly discovered capacity for what many religions have called non-dualistic thinking, or both and thinking. When you become mature, you don't just see one thing, you can see many things, and you can see both sides of a story. You can think both and. It is almost the benchmark of our growth into the second half of life. More calm and contemplative seeing does not appear suddenly, but grows almost unconsciously over many years of conflict. Now get this. You no longer need to divide every moment between totally right and totally wrong, with me or against me. You see, maturity, because of perseverance, because of difficulty, it makes you a different kind of person, where your arms can be wider and you can see much more broadly, and you can become that mature person, as James said, mature and complete, not lacking anything. Let's pray together. We thank you, our loving God, for all that you've persevered in us and through us, for us. We thank you that you're with us in our times of difficulty and trial. You're with us. You come beside us when we stumble and when we fall. And God, we pray that perseverance will work in us to make us into the people that you want us to become, mature and complete. And God, give us the grace every single day, while we're waiting, while we're working, to become those kind of people. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. God bless Orchard Grove. Have a great Sunday.